It was late October, 2016, the peak of the Pokémon Go craze. Me, Mike, Sarah, and Dave were obsessed. We'd go out every night, chasing distinct shadows on the tracker. We were driving around near the edge of town right before you get to the Florida border when a really rare Pokémon appeared nearby, a Dragonite. For anyone not familiar with Pokémon, a Dragonite was not a common Pokémon and was extremely rare. The map showed it hovering right in the center of the old Oakwood Cemetery. For context, I live about a few minutes away from Florida, in a small Georgia town. Pokémon Go was probably the most excitement we had in a long time that didn't involve driving out of town. We kept driving until we reached the gates. Unfortunately, they were locked, leaving us no option but to hop the gate. Yes, I know it was trespassing, but we were stupid and bored. The fence was very easy to climb, so we all managed to hop over without any issues. The atmosphere inside the cemetery was heavy. The air felt tense, almost as if you're being watched. I'm not sure I can describe it. It just felt off. We started walking and got to where the Pokémon was supposed to be, but just as we got to the exact spot, my phone started glitching. The GPS avatar was spinning in circles. "It should be right here," Mike whispered. We were deep in the Victorian section. The graves here were old, crumbling, probably from the Civil War era or older. That's when Sarah grabbed my arm. Her grip was tight, painful even. "Guys," she hissed. "Look." She pointed toward a large mausoleum about 50 yards away. At first, I didn't see it, just shadows. Then, movement. A figure, walking slowly between the headstones. It was a woman. She was wearing a long black dress, like something from the 1800s. A mourning veil covered her face. "Is that security?" Dave asked. "No," I said. "Look at how she's moving." She wasn't walking. She looked like she was gliding, smooth, unnatural. She moved over the uneven ground without bobbing up or down. Then she stopped. She was facing away from us, but I could feel it. She knew we were there. The air grew freezing cold. Instantly, my breath came out in white puffs. Mike, being an idiot, turned his flashlight directly on her. "Hey!" he shouted. "We're just leaving." There was a brief pause, and then what happened next still sends shivers down my spine. Slowly, agonizingly slowly, she turned around. The light hit her face, but there was no face, just darkness behind the veil. Except for the eyes, two glowing red orbs, burning like hot coals. They weren't reflecting the flashlight, they were generating their own light. She let out a sound, a screech, like metal grinding on metal. Then suddenly she started walking towards us, and that's where we had enough and ran. As we ran, I could hear what I can only describe as a heavy gust of wind blowing through the trees. This next part I can't explain. When we got back to the gate where we left the car, it was somehow unlocked. The lock had been removed, and the gate was left cracked open. We got back in the car and looked at the direction we just ran from, and saw nothing. Just vast darkness. We turned the car on, drove out of there as fast as we could. We never went back to the cemetery after that night. Sarah had nightmares for days and had to go to therapy afterwards. We all still hang out but don't like to talk about what happened that night. I'm not sure who or what she was. Was she guarding something or someone? We never found any information about her. We researched everything about that cemetery but not found anything that could explain who that lady was. We assumed she was either a demon or an evil spirit, maybe related to who she was walking towards. We all grew out of playing Pokémon Go, but what happened that night will always stay with us. This next story is the one my dad told me. It happened in the fall of 1988. No cell phones, no social media. Just three friends looking for a thrill. My dad, let's call him Alex, was with his buddies, who we'll also call Mike and Chris for the sake of this story. They were seniors in high school. There was a rumor in our town about the witch's grave in the old Pioneer Cemetery. Supposedly, if you knocked on the stone 3 times, you'd hear a knockback. Classic urban legend stuff. He said they wanted to do something scary since it was October after all, the month of Halloween and scary movies. So they decided to test out the urban legend on a Friday night, after they got home from school. They drove Mike's beat-up Ford Pinto and parked it on the service road. The cemetery was surrounded by dense woods on 3 sides. It was isolated, miles from the nearest house. They had one heavy Maglite flashlight between them, which my dad said he brought. They found the grave easily enough. They did the knocking ritual. Nothing happened, obviously. They laughed about it, feeling a bit stupid, and cracked open a few sodas they'd brought with them. They sat on a retaining wall just hanging out, talking, shooting the breeze. But something felt off. It was quiet. Too quiet. Then, Chris stopped talking mid-sentence. "Did you hear that?" he asked. "Hear what?" my dad said. "Over there, in the tree line." My dad swung the Maglite beam toward the woods. The trees were thick, impenetrable darkness. The beam didn't penetrate far. "Probably a deer," Mike said, but he stood up. He looked tense. Then it happened. Thud. A rock, the size of a baseball, landed right next to my dad's foot. It hadn't fallen from a tree. It had been thrown. Hard. "Who's there?" my dad yelled. "We see you." Silence. Then another rock. This one hit the tombstone next to Chris with a loud crack. Sparks flew. "Run!" Mike yelled. They scrambled away from the wall, but as they turned to run back toward the entrance, 3 figures stepped out from behind a large crypt. They weren't ghosts, they were men, big men, wearing dark hoodies and ski masks. They didn't say a word. They just started sprinting at them. My dad and his friends turned and ran the other way, deeper into the cemetery. They were cut off from the car. They were sprinting over uneven ground. Panic set in. My dad could hear the heavy boots of the men pounding the dirt behind them. They were fast. Suddenly, Chris screamed. He went down hard. His foot had caught in a sunken grave. "My ankle!" he screamed. "It's broken!" My dad and Mike didn't even think. They stopped and grabbed Chris, one under each arm. "Get up! Move!" my dad screamed. They were dragging him now. The men were closing the gap, 30 yards away, 20. They could see the service road through the trees on the far side, but they were moving too slow. "Left!" Mike shouted. "Cut through the woods!" They crashed into the brush. Branches whipped their faces. Chris was groaning in pain, practically dead weight. My dad looked back. The beam of a flashlight was slicing through the trees behind them. The men had lights now. They burst out of the woods onto the asphalt of the service road, but they were far from their car. The men emerged from the trees just as my dad and Mike were dragging Chris across the pavement. One of the men reached into his jacket. My dad froze. He thought it was a gun. Suddenly, the world exploded in blue and red light. A siren chirped. A police cruiser had been patrolling the back roads and saw the commotion. The officer slammed on his brakes, drifting the car sideways to block the road. The 3 men in masks stopped dead. They looked at the cop car, then at each other. They turned and bolted back into the woods. The officer jumped out, hand on his holster. "Get on the ground!" he shouted at the men, but they were already gone, disappearing into the darkness. My dad and Mike collapsed, dropping Chris gently. They were hyperventilating, shaking. The officer called for backup and an ambulance for Chris. He took their statements. My dad told him about the rocks and the chase. While the paramedics were loading Chris up, another police unit pulled up. 2 officers got out. They had been searching the woods. "We didn't find them," one officer said. "They knew the terrain too well, but we found their car parked on the logging trail." The officer looked at my dad, his face pale. "You boys have no idea how lucky you are." He walked them over to the cruiser. On the hood, they had laid out the evidence found in the trunk of the men's car. It wasn't just a prank. It wasn't kids trying to scare them. There was a roll of heavy-duty duct tape, a coil of thick rope, a tarp, and a 12-inch hunting knife. They weren't chasing them out of the cemetery. They were hunting them. If that cop hadn't turned the corner at that exact second, my dad says he knows for a fact he wouldn't be here today. They never caught the men. My dad thinks the 2 men may have been following them when they got on the service road and stalked them until they were off guard. My dad still talks to his buddies from that night. but when they retell the story, a wave of sadness can be seen on their faces. I'm just glad luck was on my dad and his friend's side that night. Otherwise, I don't know if I'd be here to tell his story. This last story happened about 2 years ago. My girlfriend, Maria, and I have always been into the paranormal. We don't really believe in it, but we like the aesthetic. We spend our weekends exploring abandoned places and old graveyards. Creepy, I know, but we first bonded over our love for horror movies. One day, after researching on some local horror Reddits, we decided to check out an old cemetery located an hour and 30-minute drive away. It's one of the oldest in the state, dating back to the late 1800s, and figured why not. We got there around 5 p.m. The sun was starting to set, casting those long orange shadows across the grass. It was beautiful, peaceful. We spent an hour just walking around, reading the names and dates on the stones. We were near the back of the property, an area that looked like it hadn't been landscaped in years. I was taking a picture of a mausoleum. That's when Maria grabbed my arm. "Who is that?" she whispered. It was now dark, so visibility was now harder to see even with our phone flashlights. I followed her gaze. About 40 feet away, standing next to a weathered headstone, was a little boy. He looked small, maybe 7 or 8 years old. He was wearing clothes that looked like from the 1900s. Pants with suspenders, a newsboy cap. He had his back to us, just staring down at the grave. "Where are his parents?" I asked. I looked around. We were the only car in the lot. There was nobody else around. "Hey!" I called out. "Are you okay?" The boy didn't move. He didn't even twitch. "Hey, kid!" I shouted louder. Slowly, the boy turned his head to the left, not all the way, just enough so we could see his profile. He was pale, like sheet white. Then, he took a step sideways, and another. He walked directly behind the large headstone he was standing next to. "We should check on him," Maria said, though she sounded like she wanted to do the opposite. We walked over. It took maybe 10 seconds to get to the stone. I walked around the side, expecting to see him crouching there. There was nobody. I checked the next row of graves. Nothing. It was open ground for 50 yards. There was nowhere he could have gone that fast. "Did you see him run?" I asked. "No," Maria said. Her face was pale. "He just went behind the stone." A cold feeling washed over me. Not the weather. That deep, instinctual cold. "Let's go," I said. "Now." We power walked back to the car. I kept looking back, expecting to see him following us, but the cemetery was empty. We got in and I locked the doors immediately. I started the car and threw it into reverse. As we were driving down the main path toward the exit gates, I felt relieved. We were leaving. It was over. I pulled up to the exit. I glanced in my rearview mirror to check for traffic on the main road. My heart stopped. Standing right in the middle of the cemetery gate, directly behind my car, was the boy. He was facing us this time. He wasn't moving. He was just watching us leave. And even from that distance, I could tell. His eyes were dark. Too dark. I felt a wave of fear go through me as I tried to process what my eyes were seeing. I told Maria, "He's back, look." As she looked back, she let out a scream and started to cry. I've had enough. I slammed on the gas and didn't look back until we were 5 miles away. Later that night, I did some research on the cemetery. I found an archived newspaper article from 1924 on Reddit. It was about a tragic accident. A 7-year-old boy named Thomas had died of influenza. The photo in the paper was grainy, but the clothes were identical. The cap, the suspenders. The article mentioned he was buried in the rear section of the cemetery, exactly where we saw him standing. Both me and Maria now believe in ghosts after that day. It's an experience I can't describe other than just fear. It's like you know that what you're looking at isn't real. Real as in living. Maria and I still explore abandoned locations, but we now do it during the day. We no longer go to cemeteries after this last experience. I'm sure anyone would understand why after hearing our story.
If this story unsettled you, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps support the channel and allows me to keep sharing more true and terrifying stories like this one. New videos are coming soon, and you won't want to miss them.